an MMO, like if you talk to any game developer, this is kind of like a meme in game development. Every developer wants to build an MMO, and it is the most ambitious, time-consuming, and expensive genre of game that you can go after. So when you hear people talk about, oh, we're building an MMORPG, a lot of red flags go up. People get skeptical because it takes serious resources and talented developers to make that happen.
Yo,
So we do
Graslo, hello, hello. So give me a quick little rundown before we get into it. What do you got behind you here?
behind me on this.
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah, Matrix poster, Marvel, pretty much all my nerd gear.
Love it, love it, love it. So, of the nerdy things, I was huge into MMOs growing up. I loved RuneScape, loved World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, for example. What are some of the games that you loved, and how come you created this Uldor, and what is Uldor?
Yeah, so I'm a big MMO junkie. Played RuneScape. I spent the most time in World of Warcraft. Years of my life in that game. But yeah, Dark Age of Camelot, Elder Scrolls. I mean, Neverwinter Nights, every one of them. So that's the genre that I most like lean to. But really, I'm a gamer. Like I play everything from shooters to RPGs to roguelike, everything. So that's kind of like always been something that I'm really passionate about. In my in my practice and in my business, I started a business as a consultant, did kind of development, just kind of jack of all trades. Go in, solve problems for companies, and really enjoyed that. But I want to kind of go back to my roots of gaming. I have worked on some gaming projects in the past, so that was something that was a big passion of mine to go to. Well, Uldor is actually something. It wasn't like something we just like came up with for Web3. It's actually a passion project of mine that I registered Uldor.com back in 2011, so 10 years
Ooh.
ago, and have been like working on lore, game mechanics. It's like the as you play games, you kind of think of like your perfect game, what it would be like, and so that's what Uldor is. It's the
That
game I've always
is
wanted to play.
Yo, that's cool. So when it came to blockchains and all this kind of stuff launching, was it the idea that you saw, hey, like this is an avenue where we can kind of grow with blockchain itself, or was there somebody that came to you knowing that you had this already in the works that wanted to kind of partner, or how did it get to the stage that it is now?
I've been into crypto for years. Like I was a Bitcoin maxi. I bought into the whole like libertarian kind of own your own fiat proof or inflation proof money, and I love the concept of like a decentralization. And then I started to kind of get swayed by Ethereum, and when the NFT movement kind of popped off, and I started getting into these NFT communities, I bought some on OpenSea. I minted a lot. I'm holding a lot of bags that went to zero, but I had a lot of fun like getting in these communities and meeting people, and then it just really clicked to me. An NFT is proof of ownership. It's a proof of ownership of a digital asset. It's something that gives you all this control and transparency, and that's something that we desperately need in gaming because we have this value of digital assets, but all of the value, all the monetary value goes to big game companies who are seeing record profits, and players largely, if you poll players, have a disdain for these companies. We don't trust big gaming companies. We think they're greedy, and so we have all these negative attitudes. And I'm just thinking to myself, if we took what's happening in the NFT space with these like decentralized community focused assets and put that into gaming, it would be revolutionary. And so that's what really got me started.
That's a great way of putting it, and it's kind of interesting that you brought up the negativity towards some of these traditional studios because we've seen a lot of wild things, especially within like the Overwatch League, and I mean even the Call of Duty League over the last little bit, where hey, you hired or sorry, you offered these franchise leagues, and then there wasn't a whole lot of support behind it, and again that kind of barrier of trust is fading away quite quickly. But the fact that you guys are on Ethereum here also raises the question about how does it work with gas fees? Is some of the stuff off chain? How close are we to the game fully launching? Is it already out? Can we play it right now? And I'll throw up some gameplay clip as we're listening to you here too.
To unpack some of that, like we did launch a Genesis collection on Ethereum, And that was we kind of view that as like our Kickstarter. You know, we give that to our community to kind of like back us, to to let us be able to kind of reward them. And uh, we've partnered with Immutable for the layer 2 solutions for like everyday game assets. We don't see like our Genesis collection trading that often, so the gas fees are not really that critical. I think when people buy like a hero class character, which is what our Genesis collection is, they probably hold on to it for days, weeks, maybe months, or even years. And so we weren't really worried too much about the gas. But as far as like everyday game items, if you get like a sword or some upgrade, you're going to want to be able to trade those without worrying about gas fees. And so that's when we went with Immutable. And they have been great partners with us. So an MMO, like if you talk to any game developer, this is kind of like a meme in game development. Every developer wants to build an MMO. And it is the most ambitious, time-consuming, and expensive genre of game that you can go after. So when you hear people talk about, oh, we're building an MMORPG, a lot of red flags go up. People get skeptical because it takes serious resources and talented developers to make that happen. So we knew early on that to differentiate ourselves, and especially with like what's going on in the Web3 space, that we would have to build more transparently. And so we broke up our development into key phases with clear deliverables. Our first deliverable was a single player mode, which you're showing a clip of now. And this is the Dread Arena. And so we launched this on Monday in a closed alpha. We have distributed keys to content creators. So we're seeing some of this on Twitch and YouTube. And we're distributing more and more keys, but really we're using this as like a play test. So we're getting a lot of valuable feedback from gamers who enjoy these genres of games, and kind of we see what mechanics we built that work and which ones that we need to kind of tweak. Any bugs that like we couldn't find in development, but once you give it to 100 or 500 players, you start to find some of these things out. But the feedback has just been amazing. I mean, it's 10 times better than we could have anticipated. Everyone who has tried it has had positive things to say about it. Many streamers saying it is one of the best Web3 games that they've tried. So I mean, that's just it's really been an amazing experience. But this is we're going to continue to do this. So like our next game mode is going to be we're going to add some additions to this one with like co-op and some more features that we don't want to talk about just yet. But we'll have like a PvP arena where players can go head to head in tournaments of 1v1 up to 5v5. And then we'll launch our faction battles, which is our first persistent world mode. And then we launch the open world. And so, again, we strategically kind of laid that out so that we can deliver playable games for the community. And we get all this valuable feedback and build a community. It's better for development because we're getting this feedback on the development side where we're testing servers, we're testing mechanics and balance, but it's also better on marketing because if we do it right, we can build a community without having to rely on this massive marketing budget to push a game in an all or nothing kind of effort. I think a lot of games run into this problem of they spend 2 to 5 years in development kind of in secret, and then they spend half their budget marketing the game, and they run into this problem of maybe it wasn't stress tested enough, or some of the mechanics that worked great with small playtesters just kind of break when you throw it in front of thousands of players. And so you see these kind of like flops of even AAA titles that have really bad rollouts. So we think that this is just like a better way to develop a big game.
You being on Immutable X is awesome because we're big advocates of Immutable X here. But I think that it was interesting that you brought up the fact of like marketing and whatnot. When I mean, for myself, I kind of view Immutable X as almost like a Web3 type Steam, even though I know that it's supposed to be kind of more of just, hey, like it's a blockchain that it's on, but it does feel like there is going to be a lot coming through that. So can you talk a little bit more about the partnership with Immutable X and what you think that means for you guys?
Yeah, what is so great about Immutable X? I mean, they are just hand in hand. Like if you need anything, they're on call. So that's great support to have for a project that has really unique and complex needs. But what I most like about Immutable X, what's the most attractive to them, is they are specifically focused on gaming, and they're bringing in big partners, and they're looking at what does a game need to succeed on the technical level, on the marketing level, and they're helping to build out all of those steps, or kind of like plug in what you need. And so that's great. And we had been from the start kind of planning to do all of this ourselves. As we were kind of selecting chains to be reliant on, that was something that we were kind of expecting to build out all these tools ourselves. But being with Immutable, just it adds a lot of layers of just being able to go to market quicker and just have that support system in place. So yeah, they are amazing partners to be with.
And for the game itself, obviously you got the single player right now, but you're touting yourself as an MMO. So what's the kind of time frame in terms of like scalability, when the multiplayer is going to come, etc.?
Yeah, so we'll have co-op in the coming future. I don't know that we have an ETA out for the co-op on the Dread Arena, which is this first mode that we've released. Our PvP, just glancing over at our roadmap here, so we have our PvP scheduled for Q3 of this year, and that's something we hope to beat, but we're working really hard on our PvP arena, and that's going to be a great test of the multiplayer, and it's also going to be very replayable. That was something we really want with all of our modes. We originally were planning like a campaign mode. But one thing that we were kind of worried about is, players play a campaign, you beat a dungeon or boss, and it's not extremely replayable. I mean, you can play it a couple of times and then you kind of get burnt out. This particular mode, if you play it, it's wave-based. The upgrades you get after each wave are kind of random. So each time you play it, it's a little different, and your strategy has to kind of shift. And so that's something that's important to us. But multiplayer adds a lot of replayability that gives more longevity to the game for sure. Now for the full MMO, we've got that slated for the Q3 of 2024. MMOs are a big project, and it is a moving target. We want to be very transparent about, like every time we build out mechanics, add content, we're going to continue to update the community to show off. Like we've teethed out a lot of like the open world procedural generation that we're using in UE5, some of the resource harvesting and gathering of resources. So we're working on all those mechanics, but we're also focused on the next playable mode so that we can have something to deliver that is a great experience for everybody.
So just when you go on your website, and for anybody that's tuned in right now, if you're interested, it does pop up saying that you can get the Dread Arena Alpha waitlist. So it is waitlist, and you can't try it right now, just to clarify, because I know you said you were giving out keys earlier, but just from a time frame.
Yeah, so the waitlist, we are regularly adding people to the closed alpha now. And what we're doing is, the reason it's a closed alpha is really to make sure that we get the feedback in a volume that we can handle. We didn't want, to have 1,000 people playing the game on day one, and then we get to just this, noise of feedback. So it's really helpful to have, streamers, the best Web3 gamers, and people that have played the genre of like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, because that's really the genre they're kind of going for, is tying in like a Souls-like game where you have these difficult challenges that feel very rewarding to overcome, but with the social aspect of an MMO, and also like the large-scale economy of an MMO that we think is going to be extremely innovated with Web3.
And so is it going to be something where you have to own an NFT to be able to play it? Is it going to be free to play?
So it's going to be free to play. We do have our hero class characters, and they're going to have special rewards and airdrops and things like that. But yeah, we think onboarding mass amounts of players is going to require free to play, and I don't think players want to come and have to buy NFTs to play your game.
Yo, facts. So I'm just going to play the trailer right quick on here so you guys can see it. And just an FYI, Graslo, you won't be able to hear it, but here we go. full screen does not want to stay full screen. So what is Uldor? Is that kind of like the world that it's in? Is that a character? Who is Uldor?
Yeah, so it's Uldor, and that's the world. And the character that you're seeing in the in the like menu of the Dread Arena, and also at the end of that clip there, is the Dread King.
Gotcha.
And so the Dread King is the main villain of our story. He was the emperor of the leading faction, and so now he is this villain of the story, and it's his minions you're fighting in the Dread Arena. So he's kind of like the main character. You're going to be seeing a lot of like marketing related to the Dread King, and we have some lore out on Medium if anybody wants to go and kind of like read some of the backstory of the world and the characters.
Love it. And then, so on your website as well, you have a number of different partners from Immutable X, Blockchain Gaming Alliance, Fair Play Collective, Elixir, MLC, Autonomous, and then it looks like GT. And I'm not really familiar with some of these. So could you give us a quick kind of like TLDR on who these partners are and what it means for us if we get into playing your game?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, Immutable X. The Blockchain Game Alliance and Fair Play Collective are two amazing networks of game founders. The Blockchain Game Alliance has large blockchain games, as well as investors in the space, builders that are building products and back-end support and things like that. Fair Play Collective is an amazing group of game founders that are all vetted, and they go through a process where their projects are kind of looked over, and they have to fall into these pillars. So it's a great resource for us to be able to network with other founders. And I'll tell you, the Elixir game launcher is our launch partner, and so that is where we are exclusively at today. We will be on additional launchers in the future, but Elixir is an amazing launcher for Web3 games. They are working hard on building continuous features, and they've just been great to work with. And just I think it's great user experience too. Like, I'm a gamer, I use Steam, I use Epic Launcher. So using Elixir, you can tell that they really want it to be as easy as possible for gamers. And they also have NFT integration, and we want to implement that in the future. But yeah, and the other partners are really blockchain partners that have either services that we're going to be using, or NFT trading and renting kind of facilitation. So we have made some amazing partnerships, and I love the development that's going on in the space. But I did want to make sure to highlight the Elixir game launcher if anyone has not used it.
You brought up renting or lending NFTs in there, and I think that was something that sounds kind of fun, and also that other people have said that they're wanting to do something like that. So what kind of model do you guys think you're going to come out with that for yours? Like, is this something that's going to be kind of like an Axie Infinity for some of these assets? You can like lend them out to other people to play for you. Is this something where it's just like a singular item that people can have the benefit from, but it's not playing for another individual? And is it like ultimately a play to earn game, or is it just, hey, this is a game with blockchain assets on it?
Yeah, so we have to be really careful as game developers when thinking about the gameplay loop and the economy, and how that all works together when you have the potential for earning. I'm a big believer in Web3. I think that tokenization of games, I think that both the NFTs and tokens are going to play a big part in games going forward. But obviously, when we look back at Axie, there were a lot of lessons to learn. But I think we also have this tendency to kind of overreact to some things, and we learn lessons when maybe those should just be like warning signs and words of caution. Because I don't think Axie did everything wrong, but certainly they built something that wasn't sustainable, and they let it go a lot longer than they should have. But when you have because Axie was kind of a special case where you had one game that had all the focus of the players who were looking to earn. It also had all the focus of investors who thought that NFTs in gaming is the future, and so if you wanted to invest in that, you wanted to speculate on that, you pretty much had one thing to buy, and that was Axie tokens, Axie assets, and so that inflated those, and it just continued to kind of feed the earning aspect, and it was just building something that was totally unsustainable. I don't think that's going to be as problematic when fast forward to there being hundreds and potentially thousands of games, all with their own NFTs and their own tokens. You're always going to have speculators, you're always going to have investors, and you're always going to have people that are, playing a game to earn tokens. But I don't think it's going to be as problematic in the future. But you definitely need to be thinking about how value is distributed in the game. If you can jump into a game and click a button and earn something, then you're setting yourself up for some kind of unsustainable model. Now we do have, we think that assets are going to have certain values that fluctuate up to players, but we also want players to be able to determine the value of some of the things that happen in the game so that the economy can be more player driven. You think about like we have resource plots planned. So if you've played, you play World of Warcraft, so resource nodes scattered around the world where you go and harvest minerals or fish or herbs. And if you imagine a player owned those resource nodes, and you could go and harvest from your own nodes for free, or you could rent those out and say, okay, you want to go you want to go harvest from my crops, then you could do that, but I get a portion of that, or I get a fee from you. But let the players kind of set the terms there. And that way, the economy is not dictated by the game. And so you don't have to worry as much about building something that's unsustainable. You're kind of handing over the value to players and then letting them decide, do I want to pay someone to do this? Do I want to, rent out this utility? And so I think, building a game that has assets with real in-game utility and then giving the players the ability to kind of monetize that if they want to. I think that's the more sustainable model.
So going to the IMX thing for a minute, or Immutable X, I should say, for anyone that doesn't know, you guys have the Rooney token that's going to be for your game, but then also we know that IMX has their token, and I've always kind of been confused about how the integration between all these different games are going to happen with their own token, along with IMX having theirs. So can you give any insight of how that's going to work?
Yeah, and so that's a great question, and I'll just say, like, I think the space is evolving constantly. A lot of the plans that we've seen from, we've been very careful to like not announce things and then change our trajectory in 2 to 3 months. But we have seen a lot of projects do that. But it is important to just kind of like keep an eye on the space and know that we're early in this market, and what resonates with players, what resonates with investors, that kind of shifts and changes. We have our core beliefs as to what is going to work long term, but we're also kind of just like watching what works well for others. I'll tell you one project I'm really interested in is Immutable. I'm sorry, Illuvium, which is also on Immutable X. And so I'm really kind of like curious how their tokens are going to work, because like you said, with the IMX tokens as well. But you can do, on an IMX marketplace, you can have your own tokens. You can trade in Ethereum. You can trade in, IMX tokens. But you want that to be a simple process. So it's kind of a balance between letting everyone, use any token they want, or having a pretty seamless experience. If you're listing an item for sale, you want a certain token, and whatever that token is, the buyer now needs to have that token. And so it can create a different kind of experience for different users. So that's something we're still thinking through. Like we see a lot of utility in having our Rooney token. And so we definitely have a lot of plans for that. But as far as like the marketplace tokens and what those options look like, that's something we're still we haven't announced exactly how that's going to work, because we have like our plans, but we're also kind of like watching the market on that as well.
Awesome. So, as we're kind of wrapping up here, I'm just curious for people that have tuned in Again, I think you got great vibes. It's been awesome hearing what you have planned for the whole game, but there are, maybe that little bit extra to incentive to be paying attention. Why should somebody be paying attention to what you guys are doing? Do you think that you're going to be a flagship for Immutable X? Do you kind of foresee yourself as growing over time? Because obviously MMO is a huge endeavor overall. What are the things that you'd want to highlight?
Yeah, I would just say what we're doing is we are trying to make really fun experiences that appeal to gamers. Like we're not trying to, build a Web3 game that, like appeals to NFT collectors or Web3 users. I personally believe that Web3 is the future of gaming and it's going to provide the better experience, but you have to have comparable games. I don't think that players are going to leave their Web2 game to play a worse version of that game on Web3 because it has tokens. But I do think that if you could build a comparable game that's a fun experience, then they're going to come try that out. And when they see the Web3 aspect, when they see that they actually have that ownership, that transparency, provable scarcity of owning their own assets and being able to trade it however they want, I think that is going to be a major value add, and it's going to add stickiness to your game. It's going to add stickiness to the whole ecosystem, and then they're not going to want to go back to their to other games where all of that value resides at the developers. So I would just say like we are really focused on building these like player first experiences, and we're also free to play and including this closed alpha. So if you want to get on the wait list, you just want to try it out. We're not asking you to like buy an NFT. You don't have to pay anything. There's no tokens involved. You can download the game and play it, and we'll be sending out more whitelist access every week.
Thank you for taking the time. Wish you guys all the best and success in the world with this.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.